Alright, this video is going to be about how to do assemblies. So we kind of have a basic assembly over here. We're going to be looking at some of the more common mates that you'll be using. So what an assembly is we're taking parts that we've already built and we're going to start kind of piecing them together. If we take a look at this drawing, we'll see we have 4 parts that we're going to be using, and they are called Part 10, Part 7, Part 12, and Part 8. And this drawing just kind of shows you how all those pieces fit together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start a new assembly. So we are not going to click on part, we're going to click new assembly. And whenever you start an assembly, the first thing it does is it's going to ask you for a part. So we get this window that pops up, and it's going to ask us for a part that we want to insert. As far as inserting the parts, the one thing you do need to remember is the first part that you insert into the assembly is what's called the base part. The base part, it never moves, it's stuck in place, and kind of all the other parts will move in relation to that base part. So you can see in this drawing here, I've labeled part 10 is going to be my base part. So I'm going to insert that part first. So I'm going to find part 10. And you see the part shows up, and then you could just click and it's going to place it inside your screen. Now the good thing about assemblies is there's fewer buttons that you need to click on. We're just going to be operating out of the assembly tab, and the only 2 buttons we really use is the insert components and the mate. That's all we'll be using for this video. Next thing we want to do is we want to insert the rest of our parts. So I'm going to go up here to insert components, and we'll get this window that pops up again. And kind of a quicker way, instead of doing each one individually, you can hold down the control button and you can select all the parts that you need. So I'm going to select parts 7, 8, and 12. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up all those parts. One little thing you may want to keep in mind, if you have a part that's kind of on its side, or maybe it's like upside down of some sort, you can adjust and you can kind of rotate that part around. You'll see kind of here in the middle of the screen there's these little rotate icons, and if you click on those it allows you to kind of rotate your part around. So that's fine. I'm going to place that there. So if we just take a look at these 4 parts, what you'll notice is pretty much all the parts move around except for our base part, which is part number 10. So this part is fixed in place and it's not going to move. All the other parts will move. So the idea with assemblies is that we have all these parts that move around and we want to stop them from moving. And we do that by adding what are called mates. And mates are kind of these laws, these little rules that you apply to your assembly. And it can be something as simple as I want this face to be stuck to this face. And usually it's going to require 3 mates for every single part to cover the 3 dimensions of that part, or the 3 freedoms of movement. For this assembly, I'm going to start off, I'm going to scoot these to the side a little bit, and I'm just going to start off with this part over here. So if you're doing assemblies, it's really good to have a mouse so that you can rotate around, because with assemblies you have to do a lot of rotating and moving things around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this part, I'm going to stick this face to that face right there. And how you do that is you're going to go up into the assembly tab and you're going to look for the button that's called mate. So I'm going to click on that. Now you'll notice whenever you open up the mate button on the left side of the screen, there's a whole lot of buttons to click on. We're not really going to be operating a lot with these buttons. Most of what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be clicking on faces and then hitting the green check. So I'm going to stick those 2 faces. So I'm just going to start by clicking on this face, and then I'm going to kind of rotate around, and I'm going to then click on this face. And what it's going to do is it's going to stick those 2 faces together. So when I click, you can see it kind of moves the part over, and then we get a little window up here, and we can just hit this little green check. So you see those faces are stuck. Now the part still moves. It can still go up and down and left and right. but it is, those two faces are stuck together. Now, one little thing you may want to keep in mind is sometimes you'll do a mate, but it doesn't look like you did the mate. For example, I stuck these two faces together, but notice if I move the part up, you see it looks like I didn't do the mate because the faces aren't physically touching each other. But if I change my view, let's say if I go into my front view, you can see that mate still exists. Okay? What that mate is doing is it's simply preventing us from moving this part left or right at all. So even though the part isn't technically touching the other part, that mate is still active and it still exists. So the next mates I'm going to do, these are called flush mates. And what they do is they don't stick two faces together. What they do is they take two faces and they make them flat with each other. So like for example, I want these faces here to be flat with each other. I don't want this face sticking out like you see it right now. So to do this mate, it's very similar to the last one. We're just going to click these two faces, these front faces, and it's going to make them flat with each other. So I'm going to click this face, and I'm going to click this one, and you can see it kind of slides the part down so that now those two faces are flat with each other. So if we take a look at our part, we can see it still has one more freedom of movement. You know, when we started this out, the part can move all over the place, but now we're at the point where our part only moves up and down, and that's it. So to fix that, I'm going to have to rotate to the bottom of this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another flush mate, making these bottom faces flat with each other. So I'm going to click this face and this one, and now we've done our three mates. So if we try to move this part, you'll see it does not move at all. And what this means is that this part is now fully defined. Okay, it can't move anywhere, it can't move up, down, left, right, forwards, and backwards. So this part is now finished. So let's move on to another part. So I'm going to take a look at this part right here, part number 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to scoot that out of the way. I'm going to try and stick this part kind of in this little pocket that you see back over here. So what I'm going to do first is I'll just stick some of these faces. So I'm going to stick this face right here, and I'm going to stick it to kind of this back face over here, and then green check. All right, and now what I want to do is I want to kind of get it in that little pocket right over there. So let's do another one of those mates. I'm going to take this face, and I want to stick it over here, then green check. And just like with the previous part that we did, we see it moves up and down. So we need to stop it from doing that. So I'm going to go to the bottom of our assembly, and I'm going to make these two faces flush with each other like that. Okay, so what we got so far, we've got part 7, does not move, it's fully defined. Part number 12 doesn't move either, it's fully defined. And we just have one part left. Now this one's a little bit different because there's a cylinder. We got these two holes. And this is what's going to be called a concentric mate. This is where you take two circular features, and what it will do is it will align the center points of those circles. And it doesn't matter if one circle's bigger or one's smaller, it will find those center points and align them together. So the way you do this, I'm going to go mate, and I'm going to select these two holes here. Now it is important whenever you select these, make sure you know the difference between selecting a circle and a cylinder. So like for example, this right here, what I have selected right now, that is the cylinder. That's what I want to click on. What you don't want to click on is that. Okay, so what I have selected right now, see, that is just a circle. That's a two-dimensional feature. This is the cylinder. That's a three-dimensional feature, so you always want to select that. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to click this cylinder, and what it's going to do is it's going to move those parts so that those two circles are aligned. And then green check. And we can see it aligned those two circles. So once again, let's kind of move this around. Let's figure out what else we need to do. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this part from moving up and down. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to have to rotate, and I'm going to click on this bottom face here, and I want to stick it to this top face on part 10. So let's click on that, scoots down, and then we can hit enter. So once again, let's see what's going on. So right now the only thing that's left is the part is rotating. To stop the part from rotating, you're going to have to do what's called a parallel mate. A parallel mate is a little bit different. What you do is you're taking two faces that are far apart from each other, and like one of the faces is crooked, and you're going to take those two faces and you're going to make them face the same direction. And how you could do that with this part is like I could take this face over here and I could mate it with this face. Now you may think that looks kind of similar to like what we did earlier with the flush mate, but the face that we just selected, that part's not going to move at all. It's stuck in place right now. All it's doing is rotating. So when I click this face, it'll rotate that part so that those two faces are now parallel with each other. So let's green check. So whenever you finish an assembly, the last thing you want to do is you just want to kind of go over your part and see if anything moves. And we can see nothing here moves. And pretty much if nothing moves on your part, if everything is stuck in place, then that means that everything is fully defined and that your assembly is done. So assemblies can be a little bit tricky. It's a lot different from building parts. I always compare assemblies to something like making puzzles. It can be kind of difficult because there's a lot of visualization that goes on. But I hope this video helped.